let's do a stop practice. Stop whatever you are doing right now. Take a few breaths. Observe your experience in this moment. Then proceed mindfully into your next moments.
Welcome everybody to this very special episode of The Sacred Space,
LAGLAGAN Nights.
I am Krizel.
And I'm Nex. And we're going to talk about failures. That's what LAGLAGAN Nights is about. Celebrating failures.
How often do we talk about failures? Or are we even open to talking about it?
Well, not really. It's something we like to hide. It's something we're ashamed of. It's something we feel guilty about. It's something that we reserve for maybe a handful of people, if not just for ourselves.
Yeah, and in general, it's not something you just share easily to a person whom you just met.
Yes,
diba?
Exactly.
It's something na tinatago siya within your family. Naku, bumagsak ako sa hindi ako nakapasa ng college.
Ang sinasabi natin ngayon dito sa LAGLAGAN Nights, what does it look like to be off formula? No? Paano kung ang usapan ay yung mga bagay na hindi mo nagawa, hindi mo na-achieve, nagkaroon ka ng maraming repercussions, negative repercussions. So, ganun yung ating magiging usapan when it comes to LAGLAGAN Nights. As in literal, we're having a party para maglaglagan.
And so now, just to start it off, have you ever had that feeling?
Yes, definitely. Many times. Parang siguro since bata ako. I think that's the reason why I want this kind of conversation. And also because I felt like I wouldn't have learned things if not for those failures.
Yeah. Ako, it scares me the most. Yung knowing na I failed and siguro people knowing about my failures. That's one of my biggest no-no. I'm a very private person. Hindi nyo nahahalata. I'm a very private person when it comes to my personal affairs. I only let people see what I want them to see. But when it comes to failures, it's quite a sensitive topic for me. And so I really am not comfortable opening that. So congratulations to me in opening and celebrating failures.
Okay. So for the rest of special episodes ng LAGLAGAN Nights, we will probably be choosing specific topics. For example, have you failed in your work life, in your career? Have you failed in your personal life, relationships? Have you failed in, even if you're a parent, parenting failures? Or yung mga plantito ngayon, I know a lot of people na hindi makapagpatubo ng tanim and they feel like they're a failure. So many topics when it comes to failing. But for this particular episode, it's really more about why we're doing this, what are we doing, and maybe share a little bit of some failures as examples why we think this is important. And for the first part, it's really more about failures in general. But for the second part, it's what are the lessons that we actually learned from the failures.
Siguro let's begin by sharing like minor failures that we had that really took a toll in our lives at some point. I can say, because I'm not the brightest student, but back in college, I would like to be like known to be jack of all trades. Ganyan. There was this hard subject that I know I had no chance in passing, but I can't have that. And I think the biggest ang concern is not failing myself, but failing the people who put me to school. So, the moment I thought I failed that subject, I freaked out. And what it looked like is horrible. We are talking about nagkukulong ako sa cabinet the moment I found out about it. And just to siguro take away that feeling, that pain of failure, it was, syempre, you were young, you were naive. And, when we were brought up, it's all about achieving parang being successful in whatever you do. But what that taught me? It's like, get a grip of your emotions. Kasi it's not the end of the world. I realize it's still gonna turn anyway. Pero yeah, that failure really took a toll on me, and I told myself na I cannot be failing this subject. Even if I don't like this subject, which I do now, doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do very, very well and to super impress. Pero siguro yung failure is I wasn't able to impress my teacher. I'm like a flowery person. I like to impress everyone that I meet. Dati. Ngayon, hindi na. And yun, yung lesson ng failure na yun is that, you know what? I don't care what other people think of me. What matters is how I get through this, because at the end of the day, they're not the ones who are feeling this. So, cheers to that. So, cheers to that, no? We celebrate failures today.
Exactly. In fact, Conscious Heart Creations has been, for me, at least when it started, it's really emerged because of failure. So, in 2010, when I was asking myself what was my purpose, which led to the birth nga, in a way, of Conscious Heart Creations, it was a total failure. Hindi siya minor. Total failure siya. It was like me looking at my life and saying, is this what I amounted to? And then everything just crashed. As in parang house of cards na, the things that I've been doing, akala ko they meant something, but it was all like this inflated balloon of myself. Yung parang puro ka lang hangin, pero walang substance. Ganun. Pero of course, other people would probably view it differently. Pero from my perspective, from where I am, parang puro lang siya hangin. It was all about a self-image that I was trying to create for myself. Pero yung self, hindi ko alam kung ano yung self na yun at that time. So, when that happened, so parang at that time, I felt like I was really such a failure. And in fact, it came to a point where I just wanted to kind of rot in my room. Parang ganung level siya.
Harsh.
As in talagang parang yun nga, total failure siya. And although after that, it wasn't like roses na kagad after the failure. It was really a series of different failures. And talagang at this point, saka ko lang masasabing I know what that meant. Pero during that time, it was bumping from one failure to the next failure. Parang ganun yung itsura niya. So, it started, okay, alam ko na yung gagawin ko. Ito na siya. Ito na yung Conscious Heart Creations. And then, failure. Hindi siya business, hindi siya company, hindi siya ganon. And parang doon siya naging, initiative siya, nagpag-collaborate lang siya, etc. It just formed after some time. The idea of us encountering failures has to change in such a way that we don't give up because failure siya. Kasi yun yung nangyari. Imagine if I said, okay, na give birth, total failure ako, so wala na akong gagawin sa buhay ko. I would have stopped there. But no, proceed. And then after nun, my next failure, this wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have been collaborating now kung nag-stop ulit ako dun sa next failure and next failure and next failure. And I think yun yung isang bagay na we need to recognize when it comes to failure. But later pa natin pag-usapan yung specific lessons that each of those failures actually help kind of come to life.
In terms of failure, ang dami talagang nag-fail ngayong taon. Ngayong taon.
Exactly.
I think ang daming plans na nag-fail ngayon kasi like, planned out siya, okay, on the 10th, parang on this decade, the marking of the decade, we will have to do this, ang daming, corporate plans, personal plans, in fact, di ba, yung mga ganon. And it really just failed this year. If we take a moment and see that, it's not that bad.
And in fact, a lot of people now keep having this parang posts nga na lessons I've learned from COVID-19, lessons I've learned from pandemic. Di ba? Parang ganun na yung mga tao. And I think it's interesting that you brought it up. Na this, if we were in our old mindset, we'll just say #2020 fail, epic fail or something, di ba? But we are actually seeing that there's the other side to the failure.
Look on the bright side. Lahat ng mga nag-fail na balik alindog 2019. Nangyayari siya ng 2020. Ang dami. Ang dami inspiration this year.
True. At saka yung mga, yung mga bagay na hindi mo nagawa. Like, decades mo hindi nagawa, tapos nagawa mo lang siya in 1 year. Ganang tipo.
Totoo.
So, we'll take a break. And later, after this, we'll talk about the lessons we've actually learned. Specifically dun sa na-mention namin ng mga failures, and perhaps some of the things that we're also reading in terms of this year, no? Ano yung mga lessons na natutunan ng ibang mga tao. So cheers to failures.
To all our failures.
To get updated in our latest episodes, you may follow The Sacred Space by Conscious Heart Creations in Spotify, Google Podcast, and other podcast channels.
Follow Conscious Heart Creations in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We also invite you to be part of our Healing and Empowerment Community Facebook group and send us an email if you want to join our Emergent Theater PH activities.
You can find all the links to our social media accounts and email address on the description box.
And we're back from the break.
Yes, so we were saying for this second half, we'll be talking more about the lessons we've actually learned from failures and why we need to continue to celebrate failures.
Yeah, of course, yung first lessons, I guess, realizing failures and even celebrating is not easy, you know? But when you celebrate, it's coming from a place of comfort na I'm already this, I know myself, I can handle it. So, one of the lessons that I realized from that failure is that hindi tumitigil yung mundo. Actually, so it's super dramatic in my mind that during those years na feeling ko this is the end of me. I can relate totally to Nex when she said na parang ang dami kong inisip gawin and it turns out hindi yun yung nasa utak ko. Well, the other part of that story is that may na-miss out talaga akong test na feeling ko yun talaga yung dahilan kung bakit ako talagang babagsak. And eventually, hindi naman pala ako babagsak. Pero, ang na-observe ko doon is, at that age, how I dealt with failure. And it's not something that I was proud of at that point. It was the first real failure that I encountered na being I co-founded this organization. I'm also very good at this. I know what I'm good at that age. And experiencing a failure from a subject that's not even math, surprising. Because I would expect that from math. But not. So, yung how I handled it is totally different from how I would handle it now. And if not for that failure and not for that experience, I wouldn't have known how to handle it now that I'm experiencing some minor failures in my life. And so that's one of the biggest lessons that I've gotten there. So it's not the end of the world. You can always start fresh.
Yes, exactly. So from my end naman, I think sobrang dami kong na-read na benefits. But I want to start by saying first na don't celebrate the failure when you're failing. Kasi, it will just, you'll add to the burden of what you're experiencing at the moment. What we're saying here is, we need to see the failures after the fact. Wala ka na nagawa, nag-fail na, it just happened. And then, from there, instead na kahon mo siya or ilagay mo, ibaon mo siya sa limot or whatever, you kind of need to just look at it and see it for what it was. You know, I failed at this. And then ask yourself, now what? What was that failure about? No? So when I ask that question for myself, I really have to say na I kind of found myself when I failed at that old self. Parang I'd like to think na yung experience of that time, the disintegration, was like a dying of a certain self or a certain image that was painful kasi nga at that time I felt that wasn't really who I truly was. And if I did not go through that process, this me that I am now embracing or that has come to the fore will not have shown up. Parang hindi ko to ma-experience, you know, I won't be speaking in the same voice, sharing what I know, and then also being in this path, parang ganun. And then yung even that asking of that question, no, what is my purpose, and then coming up with conscious heart creations and creating healing and empowering practices and safe spaces, it wouldn't have emerged from that experience kung hindi nga siya nangyari. So it's always, you have to sit through the failure, through the challenges, through the pains, kasi saka lang makakadating dun sa kung ano yung lesson niya pag natapos siya. Pero yung nangyayari, nagkukwit tayo in the middle, o kaya, you know, we end up hating ourselves so much because of a failure. Pero actually, you'll even be more successful if you allow that and you ask yourself, what was that about? What was it really teaching you? Parang not so much as kind of like sugat na na sinasaktan mo ng sinasaktan yung sarili. Not so much as that, but you kind of just look at it and see it for what it is. Parang ganun. Otherwise, magnanana na siya in everything. Hindi mo siya tinitingnan.
And also, siguro, taking from that point, ang daming individuals now who are beating themselves to it, no, their failures. Para, to me, I think it doesn't define you, me, them. It doesn't define the person that they are. It only strengthens the person that they are now. So, the reason why we're celebrating failures is we're celebrating how we responded to it, how we rose up from it, and how we learned from it, and now we're applying it at a different level in your lives. I think failures can vary naman from different persons. You know, my failure may be petty to some, no, and it's not naman that we're comparing. It's not also good to compare failures kasi we're all coming from different backgrounds, different perspectives, and values. And so, I think it's important that we celebrate the failure and how we rose up from it. You know, that's the very core of why we're doing this tonight.
Yes, exactly. And if we're actually looking at the benefits that we got from it, or from the failure, the lessons that we learned from it, then maybe those who had similar experiences of failure can review their lives again and look at their failures again and maybe see, no, how we actually can do that for ourselves and for other people, for our friends, family, and then we create that supportive community versus yung I don't want to even talk to you because you're a failure or because you did something, or yung mga ganun.
I don't want to get associated.
Di ba? Yung mga ganyan. But instead, it becomes a supportive, healing, empowering community.
And that would have, yung healing part would have not been possible without the support of your loved ones. No? It really forms part of how you will rise up from that. your friends, your families, or the people who still believed in you after that. So they really form part of how you deal with the pains of failure.
Yeah, and also this particular special episode, will definitely be inviting guests later on because as we mentioned kanina, no, parang we have different backgrounds, we have different contexts, and we'd like to open the floor to those contexts. Parang we will share our experiences on specific topics, pero we will be inviting guests to celebrate with us in terms of their own failures and lessons learned from those failures.
Yeah, and one notable thing is that the guest will not be from the high
Expert.
from the high parts of the society. No, not the experts, but really it could be you guys. So, any one of our listeners or viewers, commenters. So just comment down below.
Yeah, and also let us know
If you want to be part
topics,
of
want to be
Yeah.
part of this. What should we celebrate as your failure or as anybody's failure? So we're open to that. Just put it in the comment and let us know. And we will also be, hopefully in the coming days, we get to party. Literally party celebration, kaya siya Laglagan Nights. This one, we have a special episode for this at least once a month. So we probably have around 3 episodes more of Laglagan Nights.
Yeah, with guests. With guests, hopefully.
Yes. So, cheers to that. And we don't really wanna say so much about this because marami pa tayong pag-uusapang failures in the coming episodes.
And that's all for tonight. But cheers to all of you guys. Cheers to Nex. Cheers to everybody. That's it for tonight.